Town meeting members, please take their seats and fill them. It's now 7:44. Using this analog device. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 has 6. Precinct 2. 16? Whoa. Oh, that makes a difference. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 13. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 14. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 12. I can hear everybody up here except those people who are trying to speak. 13 for Precinct 5. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 13. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 12. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 10. Don't interrupt the cup. What's the change in the number? For 15. So that makes it 99. She added 2. I know, I almost did it. Will you please rise and join me in saluting the flag of the United States of America? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I will read the necrology. As you can see, this evening's meeting is dedicated to a late town meeting member and veterans agent. Tomorrow's next session will be for Mrs. Stetson. Rita F. Whalen, 79. May 17, 2013, cafeteria worker for 13 years at the high school. Joseph J. Gambrazio, June 18th, uncle of Selectman and Precinct 2 Rep. Cynthia Walsh. Dolores Smith, 73, wife of Precinct 7 Rep. Arnold Smith. Edmund F. Malloy, 77, July 5th, former chairman of the Council on Aging. Bertha C. Kinsella, 99, July 10th, former teacher, Stoughton Public Schools. Herbert N. Staples, March 8th, former electrician for the school department and father of firefighter Donald Staples. Joan B. Mead, 88, July 13, original Redevelopment Authority member and aunt of Laurice Rubel of the Recreation Department. Stephen Kelch, 62, July 7th, English teacher at the middle school for 33 years. It wasn't always the middle school, it was the junior high. Howard J. Daigle, 67, July 20, former conservation officer. Elizabeth Smales, 87, August 3, wife of former town manager Robert T. Smales. Noreen P. Finn, 80, August 7th, wife of former selectman Edward Finn. Evelyn A. Estabrook Ryder, 85, September 22nd, clerk and treasurer's office and auditor's office, mother of retired assistant town engineer Gary Ryder. Gustav E. Carlson, 85, October 1, former volunteer firefighter, member of the 250th Committee, and brother of former and longtime town meeting member Ina McMahon. Charles W. Cash, 84, October 5, former Housing Authority member. Paula Abujali, probably not get that, 78, August 22nd, Administrative Secretary at the Jones Early Childhood Center. Frederick M. Stanton, Jr., 81, October 30, former teacher, assistant principal at junior high and assistant superintendent of schools, also 33 years in the school system from 1961 to 1994. Charles F. Lodge, 89, November 2nd, retired Stoughton Fire Department, veteran, Graves officer, and I guess you can read all the rest. Carlton G. McMorrow, 86, November 26, former Precinct 6 and 7 town meeting rep and a member of the Council on Aging. Edna B. Phillips, 94, November 28, former teacher's aide at the Jones Elementary School. Francis J. Stetson, 80, December 11th, Precinct 8 Chairman, former Finance Committee member, Town Hall clerical staff and the Town Accountant's Office, and also the Fire Department, ambulance billing. Florence A. Lever, 86, December 21, mother of former town auditor Paul Lever and mother-in-law of former Precinct 5 and 6 town meeting representative Noreen Lever. Arthur J. Lavis, 82, December 30, retired DPW mechanic for over 25 years. Judith E. Brown, 66, January 23, 2014, special ed teacher's aide at the high school from 1982 to 2011. George F. Vickford, 90, February 2, former chairman of Finance Committee in the early 1970s. James A. Lindelof, 66, February 4th, former member of the Finance Committee not too many years ago. Thomas F. Herr, 85, March 3, former member of the Conservation Commission. Ruth M. Mitchell, 88, March 9th, mother of Precinct 7/8 Town Meeting Rep and Finance Committee, Stephen D. Mitchell. George Gallant, 83, who passed away in March, former Precinct 5 representative, Town Hall Building Committee, and uncle of Precinct 4 Town Meeting Rep and Conservation Commission member, Gerald McDonald. Evelyn Macro-Giannis, 85, March 24th, sister of Precinct 5 Representative Manny Macro-Giannis. Jancico Vargas, 83, April 3rd, father of Stoughton Redevelopment Authority member, Carlos Vargas. Philomena A. Pasquarelli, 88, May 9th, mother of police officers Joseph and Anthony Pasquarelli. Domingos DeAndre, 92, May 11th, father of Stoughton firefighter John DeAndre. Jean P. Omen, 59. May 12th, sister of Precinct 2, Town Meeting Rep, Mary Ann Kilgore. William P. Hamill, 84. June 1, retired Animal Control Officer, 1971 to 86. And Francis B. DuPont, 80, who died last Friday, June 13th, mother of Town Hall staff, Candy DuPont. Have a moment of silence. At this time, I recognize Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We have a presentation to do tonight for one of our retiring members. So if Mr. Peter Ventresco could come down, that'd be terrific. So as I understand it, we have the honor and privilege of having Representative Galvin here with us as well. We have a proclamation from the Senate and from the legislature, and I'd like to read the Senate one first and then call upon Representative Galvin to present the other one, if you would. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends his congratulations to Peter Ventresco. In recognition of many years of service to the citizens of Stoughton as a Finance Committee member and town meeting member, your efforts have proved a valuable contribution to the community. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted to the Clerk of the Senate. Signed, President of the Senate, Teresa Murray. This is being presented to Peter because he's fulfilled the 9-year term limit on the Finance Committee. And this is his 9th year, so we have a tradition of being able to recognize those folks for their contribution and volunteer. And I got to tell you that Peter has been a significant part of this whole effort, and he really adds balance to the Finance Committee. And he's truly committed to the town meeting and the town. So you've been well represented with Peter, and I wanted to thank him for his.
Good evening to all. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to honor someone who can last 9 years on the Finance Committee. That's a special feat in itself. And I come here tonight to represent both myself and Representative Kafker, as we have sponsored this citation, and it's from the House of Representatives. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Peter Ventresco in recognition of your 9 years of dedicated service on the Stoughton Finance Committee. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. And it was supposed to be given this the 5th day of May, which was your first meeting, I believe. But we were unable to make it that day, and I guess fortunately your meeting ran a little bit longer, so we were able to give this. So there is a silver lining to the meeting lasting this long. But it's signed by the Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo, myself, State Representative William C. Galvin, and State Representative Louis L. Kafka. Congratulations, Peter. I
really want to thank Representative Galvin on no notice. He offered to deliver the citation and do the presentation tonight, so I am truly in his debt. Thank you so much. As is custom with the Finance Committee for the retiring members, we have a plaque that's presented. It has the 9 covers of the town meeting manager's reports, the town meeting reports, and the final report of the Finance Committee for his last year in office. So we'd like to present this to Peter as well. It's a cost of $52.23. Words.
Yes. Well, if I knew this was going to happen tonight, I would have put on a suit and a white shirt and a black bow tie to be more appropriate to accept these honors, and I'm real proud of this. Over the years, that 9 years looked like it was getting to be a long, drawn-out time. Some nights, we were there at 11 o'clock at our meetings, and some of them were hectic. But now that it's over, it seems like it was only yesterday, and I would really like if I could stay longer, but I know I can't. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder, and a brief review where we left off and where we went from the last session. This is, get our mind, we've been over 2 weeks. The seventh session convened at 7:45 with 109 present, and the counted votes logged in range from 108 down to 81. We did have a presentation of the kids voting, and we still have some reserved articles that are already been listed in that last blue sheet. Everybody except the selectmen got a copy of the blue sheet. The moderator had to send one to himself, too. We have copies saved this packet that you got for the May 28th meeting. And everything else that's on there includes what has been on the table. Remind you one thing, tabled items, that means there was a motion to postpone and lay on the table. An article has to have a motion to remove it from the table. But if it was scheduled for the evening, in particular, the night that it's on the schedule, it is treated just as it is in the warrant. We also agreed at the beginning we would not be continuously moving articles to a certain time. That had to be done at the first session. And that is done, so there's no more. Hopefully, the next session will be the last session for this town meeting. Yeah. There is supplemental material that had been given out. And with that, just want to remind you that also at the last session, we didn't do a lot, but we did a lot of talking. We went from 8:52 to 11:04, and it covered Articles 35, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. We adjourned at 11:04 till this evening. At this time, I'm going to, and these are just notifications that something is going to happen in the next session and information has been handed out. First, I would make a note. You did receive a Finance Committee analysis regarding the school budget, and that will be, this is in preparation for when we get into the budget and the school material. It most likely will not happen till tomorrow, Wednesday. Mr. Coleman, are you still planning to have a reconsideration?
Yes.
Could you get up and just mention that, not the subject, that you're just going to do it on what article?
Isn't that Wednesday we do that?
That will be at the Wednesday session, as we come to the end. All reconsiderations of the warrant articles will be taken before we do Article 2. And I believe you asked for Article 34, no explanation, it's just going to be on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's a request. We make official motion that night to do it. And is Mrs. Camacho present? She did make a request, and it has to do with some of that on the school committee. She may make it later on. She did say she was going to be delayed this evening. Do we have any further comments from the selectmen or the finance committee on any information? Mr. Hill.
No, Mr. Moderator.
It's done after we've done all articles once. Mr. Cohen, I was going to recognize you for the next thing. Is it on the No, I can't hear a thing you're saying.
Could I have a moment of special privilege, please?
Can you have what? Please go to the microphone and you can do that. If I can't hear you, I can't give you the privilege.
May I have a minute of special privilege, please, to compliment the Finance Committee, Pat Colburn, and Mrs. Barbara Anzavino for a great job on this budget. I happened to be at that meeting, and they did a wonderful, wonderful job. And I thank you, and I'm sure they do, for your hard work.
Okay, but listen, now we'll get into the formal business. I hope. The book is getting thick. That means maybe I'm getting thin. Article 45. I'm going to recognize Mr. Cohn to put the article on the floor. And I understand that there is an addition to this. Article 45. The petition, one of the petitioners of record will bring on.
Article 45, Solar Power Overlay
Oh, wait a
District.
minute, I'm looking, yeah,
Oh.
okay, follow.
Is it 45 or 47 I'm supposed to be doing?
45 also, because
Okay,
I'm 2 steps ahead of where I'm supposed to be.
okay. Probably didn't get enough sleep last night, Howie. I know.
Yesterday was a...
Motion to amend the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaw by inserting a Section N entitlement Solar Power Overlay District as printed in the warrant.
And I believe that you people had asked for a map to be included in your recommendations.
Yes.
Also, we need a report of the planning board, which is, the planning board voted 4-0 to recommend Article 45. The planning board had 4 members present. for the zoning bylaw public hearing held on April 14, 2014. Therefore, the planning board's vote reflects a membership of 4 for this particular meeting. I believe the town planner has information. I recognize Maureen O'Toole.
Through the moderator, good evening, everyone. I'd like to preface this zoning bylaw article just to update the town on what we're trying to do through the Energy and Sustainable Committee. The town of Stoughton is in the process of becoming a green community, and that is one of the reasons you're seeing this bylaw this evening, the Solar Power Overlay District bylaw. What I'd like to do is quickly run you through the criteria of becoming a green community. The first criteria is to provide an as-of-right siting and a designated location for renewable, alternative energy generation, research, and development. That criteria 1 is what we're trying to meet tonight through the Solar Power Overlay District bylaw. The second criteria is adopt an expedited application and permit process and as-of-right energy facilities. The third criteria is to establish an energy use baseline and develop a plan to reduce energy by 20% within the next 5 years. The fourth criteria is to purchase only fuel-efficient vehicles. And the last criteria is to set requirements to minimize lifestyle energy costs for new construction and to adopt a stretch code. So this evening, I am presenting criteria 1, which is the Solar Power Overlay District. And if you want to turn to page 177 in your town meeting book, in case you don't have the map with you, there's a copy of that map. That particular area is a 33.2 acre site. That is our landfill. And through the planning board, through lots of meetings, we decided that to just start to generate some sort of solar power overlay district, that we chose that area to implement as far as this bylaw to promote the creation of a new large scale. In this particular bylaw, it's an as-of-right use, and what that means, as-of-right, is it doesn't have to get a special permit or a variance. As-of-right means that it would go directly to the planning board for a site plan review process. So it would go through the review process via the planning board, and it would be distributed to all the departments for review. And if we needed to use an outside consultant, we would be able to do that, and the developer would pay for that through an escrow account. So I think that the as-of-right siting makes sense for us right now in that particular area. That overlay district might suit, our needs. I won't be taking questions on the status of the landfill, any contractual questions. I'm really here for questions on the zoning. So if anybody has any specific questions, through the moderator, I'll entertain those questions.
Mr. Gito, do you have some questions on the zoning? Oh, okay. Well, you're the first one sitting there, so that's your privilege.
The landfill in North Stoughton is going to close soon. It's going to be capped, and it's going to have a post-closure use. All of that is required by the Department of Environmental Protection. And so we need to have a place to have a solar array, and that's the place that we chose. So this is right in line with making sure that the landfill has a post-closure use. So I hope that you support this. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mr. DeFelice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moderator. Just a couple of quick questions. Was this bylaw design or written off a bylaw of another town, or how do we come up with all these paragraphs, et cetera, et cetera?
Through the moderator, what I actually did is I went online and I looked at all the communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that were green communities, and I reviewed probably 8 to 9 zoning bylaws, and I put the bylaw together that seemed to suit our needs in Stoughton. And once I finished writing the bylaw, I sent the bylaw off to the Department of Energy and Resources in the Commonwealth of Mass, and I asked their legal department to review that bylaw to make sure that I was heading in the right direction. So before I got to town meeting, they sent me an email, and they told me that I had met all the requirements and that the bylaw was legal.
Also, you mentioned the area up there is 33.2 acres.
Yes.
Is that measured as a plane, or is it measured on the faces of the slopes, or how is the acreage measured on this?
Through the moderator, it's just measured through the land area, through the assessors.
Yeah, that was my question. My question is this measured as if it were a flat plane, or is it measured
Yes,
on
it
the
is.
slopes?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So most of the ones I've seen in the area, like Canton, up on Pine Street, has had one for a while. There's one down at Stone Hill College where the clock farm is in Easton. There's one over in Brockton. But all of those are on large flat parcels of land. So I'm wondering, how is this going to work with, some of the slopes are pretty steep. Anybody that's been up to the dump, you know that. So I'm wondering, how is that going to work?
Through the moderator, I think that through the engineering process, the person coming in who would be filing an application, I think that would be their responsibility, not ours.
Well, so the flat area on the top is 33 acres, that's 33 acres up there?
If I can, Mr. Moderator, I can answer the question. Yeah, part of the closure process requires that the top be leveled off and flat. So there will be an access road, much like a switchback to the top. The top will have an approximately 3-acre portion that's flat, and it will support the solar array.
Oh, okay, so there'll be about 3 acres up there flat, and the approaches will just go up the slope as they do now. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Anzavino. Oh, right. Mr. Cohn?
Who owns this? We're talking about consultants. Who is going to own this solar place? Is it the town? Are we going to lease it out to someone to run? Is someone going to buy this property and run it?
The property is actually, through you, Mr. Moderator, the property is actually owned by the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority, and they will have a lease with the operator of the solar array.
Thank you.
Mr. Lurie?
Dave Lurie, Precinct 6, through you, Mr. Moderator. I just had a simple question. If today we have a landfill, after the solar facility is put in, I assume we won't have a landfill at that spot? I can't imagine bringing our waste to the place where the solar panels would be, but I could be wrong. I just want to... No?
We won't have a landfill.
We won't have a landfill. So we're going to be bringing our waste where? Rochester?
The waste does not go to the landfill now. It goes to a trash-to-energy plant in Rochester.
So this is...
What is done there now is a construction and demolition recycling operation, and that will stay.
There's room for both. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Through you, Mr. Moderator. Previously, I referred to this as Mount BJ. And what happened was, out what is in that mountain? You say it's construction debris. What is it?
I think that that's not relevant to this article. I think that is not in the scope of what I did. I did the zoning end of it, so I can't answer that question.
But if you're going to build on it, you're going to put all these solar panels up there, and the town owns this piece of land, correct?
If I may, the redevelopment authority owns the piece of land, and the solar array is required as a condition of closing the landfill by the DEP, like Mr. Gito said.
Okay. So I think, seeing that the town, the redevelopment authority is the town, correct?
Yes and no.
So we own this piece of land, is what I'm getting at. We have a big mountain of something, God knows what's in the mountain, and we're actually responsible for that now. So we're just gonna put a cap on it, so whatever in that mountain leaches off into the water, which runs into Avon, which runs down to Brockton. We don't really care about that, right? As long as we get the solar power there.
If I may, the landfill's being closed in accordance with DEP standards, and that's all taken into account in the closure of the landfill. The landfill must be closed. The town and the redevelopment authority doesn't have a choice in the matter, and it has to be closed under a permit process through DEP, and they approve every step of the process from beginning to the end until they issue the final permit for use of the solar array.
Okay, if the town owns that land, somebody made a mountain there, did the town make money on that mountain? And I realize I'm going slightly off scope here, but I don't think I've ever seen any financial money being exchanged on that mountain.
You know, I think that these questions probably should be at another meeting, as far as questions on the landfill, monies and contracts. What I'm doing here is basically just zoning. Those are outside issues that maybe should be at another meeting.
All right. Now, so the town's going to allow solar panels to be there. Are we going to gain any revenue from those solar panels?
You know, again, that's out of the scope of this bylaw that I wrote.
Mr. Murphy?
All right.
Mr. Murphy, our town council says he may be able to answer some of your questions. You have any? Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman.
All right, to get back on point,
Oh,
and I'll ask you
I
a
guess-
question.
Just to answer your question, Peter, again, the redevelopment authority owns the landfill. They're going to do a lease to the company that's going to do the solar array. The benefit will come back to the town of Stoughton through energy credits from the electricity that's created.
So we will gain, I mean, we
You know,
will
in
gain.
the meantime, you know, the town does derive revenue, as does the SRA, from the current operations and will in the future. None of that's changed. And that's been the case since the landfill was given to the redevelopment authority back in the mid-'70s.
All right, thank you. One more question. If you have the zoning area there, is that the only limit to solar panels that can be installed, or will you have to rezone other areas within the town?
Right now, that is the only area that's zoned. That is the only overlay district. Yeah. You can do it on a house by right.
Okay, but
Yeah,
what,
this is just commercial,
all right, on commercial property,
yes.
any commercial building in the town, if they decided to put panels either on ground level or up above, do they have to come back?
I think I'm going to ask the building inspector that question.
Mr. McGrath?
Under the current zoning, any commercial building can add solar panels to the roof of their building, assuming that they don't, in that process, violate the height requirement of the building. Generally speaking, one-story or two-story industrial or commercial buildings could add solar panels on their roofs by right. To add a ground level solar array would not necessarily be by right, and I haven't actually had to deal with that such an application such as that as of yet. But I would imagine that you would treat the solar array as a structure, and it would have to meet all the requirements of a building. So I think it would be much more difficult to do a ground level solar array as an accessory to an existing building or on a virgin piece of land. But a rooftop installation would probably be as of right.
So they would have to go for special zoning, most likely.
For a ground level one, perhaps you would.
So if I had a marijuana factory down the street from me and they wanted to put solar panels on it, they would have to go for special zoning.
Probably not.
Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5, I move the question.
Mr. Cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Cut off debate. On the motion, which, I'm not going to read that whole thing, which is to amend the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaw by inserting a section N entitled Solar Power Overlay District to be inserted before section 12 and to follow section M of the zoning bylaw with the map that has been provided in the warrant, as printed in the warrant. Since this is a zoning article, all those in favor, please rise, and the chairman will take account. Precinct 1.
8.
Precinct 1 is 8. Precinct 2. 14. Precinct 2 is 14. Precinct 3. Precinct 3. 16. Precinct 3 is 16. Precinct 4. 16. Precinct 4 is 16. Precinct 5. 15. Precinct 5 is 15. Precinct 6. 15. Precinct 6 is 15. Precinct 7. 13. Precinct 7 is 13. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 8. All those opposed, please rise. Precinct 1.
Mr. Moderator, I failed to note the vote of Mr. O'Regan. Was that in favor? Make that 9 and 0 against.
Precinct 2. 3. Precinct 2 is 3. This is noes. Precinct 3. 0. Precinct 3 is 0. Precinct 4. 0. Precinct 4 is 0. Precinct 5. 0. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. 0. Precinct 6 is 0. Precinct 7. 1. Precinct 7 is 1. Precinct 8. 2. Precinct 8 is 2. The motion carries. 106 yes, 6 no.
Thank you very much.
Article 46, since this was recommended by the Finance Committee, I will go with their motion.
Mr. Moderator, did you want the Finance Committee to read this motion?
Well, that's what it says here.
Okay. Article 45,
No, this article
excuse me, 46.
46.
To authorize the Board of Selectmen to file a home rule petition with the General Court for specific legislation to expand the quota for liquor licenses to be located in the Central Business District, as printed in the warrant.
Okay, that's the motion. On any discussion? Mr. O'Regan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This article is being offered in anticipation of, drum roll please, getting the downtown back on its feet. Applause. All right, come on. Get with the program. So the thinking behind this, frivolity aside, is that by statute, under the liquor control laws, we have, and I can't tell you how many liquor licenses we have off the top of my head, but they're limited. 26? And they are limited. We are close to maxed out, if not maxed out, on licenses that are now granted. If we want, and it appears based on all the master planning, visioning studies, and what people talk about, we want the downtown to come alive. And we know from one enterprise that has a liquor license that is helping us see what the potential for the downtown is. We need to do something to be able to attract the hospitality industry into the square. We cannot do that without more liquor licenses. Restaurants, we talk about we'd like to have a good restaurant in the downtown. Restaurants need liquor licenses. So, in anticipation that sooner or later, preferably sooner, we will have a plan in the works and actually getting the downtown off its feet, we propose this petition to the General Court to increase our liquor licenses for 6 special licenses in the Central Business District. That's a small area. If you look at the map that the Planning Board gave you, it is the green area, basically the downtown commercial area. What the legislature will do, and this, for example, was done in Norwood, is they will grant an increased number of liquor licenses for a special purpose in a special area by petition of the community. Our hope is that 6 licenses will give us the flexibility to attract and retain a number of hospitality businesses in the center. You've heard some discussion that the Redevelopment Authority is moving towards a use of the old Stoughton Depot train station. You've heard and approved some expenditure of Community Reinvestment Act money for the theater, and some of the plans for the theater include a lounge area. And if you've been to similar facilities in other communities, there is a place, and if you've gone to a show, there's a place where you can get refreshments and intermission. We could do that. There was a program under the Stoughton Mixed Use Overlay District for the corner of Morton Street that was looking to have a restaurant facility in there. It could be used there. So just hypothetically, we've used up 3 or 4 of these licenses for what we hope will be good, sustainable, quality establishments. It will also allow us to retain the licenses that we have for development throughout other areas of the community. One of the projects that is ongoing is a potential conference center in North Stoughton with a hotel. They, I imagine, would like to have a liquor license. Well, we can't have all of them with the number we have. Why 6? In the space of the Central Business District, it seemed to us to be a reasonable number to ask for. The sense that I think we have is that we want to have restaurants and not really bar rooms in the square, and we want to control the number, so 6 seems to be reasonable. We can petition for more. What we want to be careful of is petitioning the legislature for more licenses than they might seem reasonable and get shot down. So after consultation with our delegates to the state legislature, a number of 6 they suggested was something that if we put this bill forward, they're optimistic they could get for us. So that's the reasoning behind this request for you to adopt. And why now, and not why wait until next year or the year after? We need to be very impatient about getting the downtown done. We need to be impatient. And one of the things about being impatient is to look ahead of what we need and get it done before we have to get it done, because if we wait till we have to get it done, it's already too late to do it. If we are successful as the master plan and the downtown plan evolve over the next several months, we will have a downtown plan ready to implement. By the time the legislature excuse me, acts on this bill, it's my hope and belief that we will have the licenses and we will have these projects really coming online close to one another. So we don't have businesses in purgatory waiting for us to get licenses, and we don't lose the opportunity for the community of having businesses that want to locate but no licenses to give them. So that's the logic behind the timing now. So I urge you to support this, and I'd be fully prepared for any questions that you have on this topic. Thank you, Mr.
Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. Yes, I guess we can't be patient, but we have to be careful. And I went to the master plan meetings, and it sounds like a good idea generally. However, this is not, the Finance Committee said licenses can be used for more upscale venues slated for the downtown as a driver for development. Yes, also could be used for bar rooms. This does not say anything about it in what we have here. However, there was a news item maybe a month ago or so. The town of Rockport used to be a dry town. Then some people thought that maybe they could have restaurants that could have some drinking in the establishments and have it done properly. So I wrote to the town clerk of Rockland and got their, Rockport, and got their article, and I'll read a little bit of it for you. This would be to request a limited number of all alcoholic beverages to restaurants, inns, function rooms, or similar establishments, but not taverns or package stores. Said legislation to further authorize the board to limit the time which such establishments may serve such beverages and/or require that restaurants such service be only in conjunction with the consumption of a meal. Sounds like something we want. Then they go a little further here. Now they wanted 10 licenses, okay, and up to 20 seasonal licenses. Well, that doesn't apply to Stoughton. We're not a seasonal town. and it's only to such patrons who are seated at a table or stool for the consumption of a meal, or for a special license under paragraph 14, chapter 138 of the general laws, or licenses for the sale of all alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises by those patrons attending a function, social gathering, and so forth. So what I'm saying is, yes, this is a good idea, but it's too broad, and I don't think we want to do this. Let's define it. If we have to wait a year, I'm sorry, but this is not what I think Stoughton needs, and I don't believe we need more bar rooms. Thank you.
Mr. Scardino.
Joe Scardino, Precinct 1, Chairman of the Planning Board and Chairman of the Master Plan Committee. Before I make the points that I was going to make, I wanted to ask a question to the town manager, I guess, who's not in the room. Okay. Can't ask the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen because he isn't here.
Boy, I feel pretty
I'm going to
bad
raise
right
this
now.
question to Mr. O'Regan by default.
I can't answer it.
Here's Mr. Hartman. My question, Mr. Hartman, is the last speaker talked about a series of conditions preceding to a host rule change to our liquor license quantity. My understanding is that the Board of Selectmen are the grantors of the ultimate grantors of those and can put whatever restrictions that are legitimate in the Commonwealth on those licenses, such as that they only be for restaurants that serve food and some of the other conditions that Mr. Coleman just made.
I think you can request that, but ultimately, it's the decision of the legislature to grant X number of 138, Chapter 138 licenses, and those kinds of restrictions are not found within the statute.
No, my point is, aren't those put on locally?
Those are put on locally.
Right.
But you can also request it in the legislation like Mr. Coleman suggested.
I see. Well, I'm going to continue on in favor of this because throughout the Phase 2 process, the economic development component, our consultant, Kathleen McCabe of McCabe Enterprises, has talked about the necessity for having upscale or having restaurants, period, in the downtown area to complement a resurgence of the arts that we've talked about in other town meetings, but not just the theater, but other types of arts. We have some artists in residence in the old New England Furniture Building, but this is something, again, I stood before you the last session talking about a pump priming of the economic engine in the square that doesn't require any taxpayer dollars. And this is another example, ladies and gentlemen, of an article that is clearly an economic development item. It's consistent with the master plan. It's consistent with what you're going to see in the ultimate economic development component. And I've heard Mr. Coleman's comments. I think that the Board of Selectmen locally can put those restrictions, that we have a pretty good idea as to what we want to see as far as the types of establishments to get these liquor licenses. Again, we need to help ourselves. We're not going to have developers, they're not leapfrogging each other to do development in the square. There has to be some incentive, and the incentive has to come from this body. I behoove you to pass this.
Mr. Gito.
I'll be quick. I'm the vice chairman of the Redevelopment Authority. I'm certainly in favor of this. I believe that all the other members would be also, but I haven't pulled them. My question to the Board of Selectmen town manager is, would you be willing to make sure that the number of licenses that are already in the downtown do not get diminished? In other words, this only says that there'll be 6 there for sure. So you could take the rest of the licenses that are in the downtown and move them somewhere else. But I don't think that that's the intent of this article. Am I correct or incorrect?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, this article is intended to give us 6 additional liquor licenses that may only be used in the central business district. It would not affect the licenses townwide, and as I read this, and I think how it's intended, would not adversely affect licenses that exist within the 26 licenses we have by state law that may also be within the central business district.
However, the question was not answered. The answer to the question would be, yes, there are X number of licenses in the downtown area. We expect that those X will continue, and we will add 6 to it. Is that that's, as I read this, what your intent is? But perhaps you plan to move those 6 elsewhere and only have 6 in the downtown.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, I didn't understand the question. See if I get it right. We cannot now dedicate any licenses to the downtown, to the central business, to the downtown.
Yes.
This would dedicate 6 licenses, new, in addition to the 26 we already have.
You're getting closer. So let's just assume, we'll pick a number for X. Let's say that there are 4 in the downtown area at the present time in the central business district. Let's just say that. Would the intent be to have those, not move those 4 somewhere else as time goes on, and only have 6 in the downtown area? In other words, would you...
The simple answer to that question is the board does not have that authority. A liquor license is a financial asset that the license holder is free to sell to somebody else, and ultimately that license can move. There is no provision in the statute anywhere for the board to prevent that. The only licenses that would be dedicated to the downtown, to that central business district, would be these 6 new licenses, and they are restricted by the legislature, not the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. So it's sort of a bidding war as to where the other 4 go, right? That theoretically 4. Okay. Thank you. I'm in favor of this, even though I would hope that there would be more than 6 in the downtown area. Thanks.
I'll buy you a drink.
Mr. Cohn.
We're finally doing something right. We're planning ahead. These liquor licenses aren't going to be here tomorrow. I don't think they're going to be here in a year. It could be up to 2 years, if I'm correct. A year, year and a half. So the time we're ready to start this, or someone's interested, we can tell them the process has already taken place. And I believe that Stoughton Center can be revived, and it will be revived. This helps the process. I'm all in favor of it. It's more taxpayers' money coming in, and we can get rid of these empty buildings and probably make it prettier in downtown. Thank you.
Mr. Lurie.
Dave Lurie, Precinct 6. I'm not opposed to having a restaurant that wants to serve alcohol. I enjoy a cocktail when I go out with my family, friends, and you know, I'm sure a majority of people here don't, generally speaking, have a problem with liquor licenses in town. I think really economic development also, in order to get to economic development, you want to think about safety, and I think that's the only thing that's really holding people back a little bit is, gee, well, how much safety am I sacrificing in order to get the economic boost that we want? So I just have a simple question to the Chief Shastany, if he's here, to just put to rest any concerns anybody might have about the safety of our town if we added more licenses. That's my only question.
Chief?
To the previous question, every license adds an obligation and compliance checks, and our sincere hope is that the people that get these licenses will abide by their requirements. And I can't predict the future. Depends on what the future brings. We're equipped to handle it, though. Thank you.
That settles the question. Mr. Murphy? Mr. Murphy used to move the previous question. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion to cut off debate. Although this is only requires a 2/3 vote, it may be, I'm going to ask, it does not require a 2/3 vote. I'm going to take account anyways. All those in favor, please rise. All right, I'll do it by a voice vote so that we can waste some more time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. All right, I will declare on a voice vote. And that is only to petition the general court. Now. Where are we? Article 59. What do we have? Something. Oh, I get things sticking together here. Thank you. Okay. First of all, Mr. Cohn. And I understand there's an addition to this, very short addition. Oh, you bring it and then we'll ask it. Well, it's not on there.
Article 47, Stretch Entity Code. Motion to adopt the Chapter 163 Stretch Energy Code, Section 163-1 through 163-4, as printed in the warrant.
There's one other thing Town Council has advised to be added to this. No, I don't. Marian's right. Still making one.
Add on July 1st, 2015. Thank you.
Effective date. Mr. Billow, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have just a brief description of what the Stretch Energy Code is about, and it's written right on it. Okay. And we're going to have just a very brief few PowerPoint slides also to accompany along with this. So I'll get started. Again, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm David Billow. I'm the chairman of the town's Energy and Sustainability Committee, a resident of Precinct 4, a little better. Dave Billow, chairman of the town's Energy and Sustainability Committee, Precinct 4. I'm here tonight to ask you to vote in favor of upgrading a portion of the town's building code to be more energy efficient. This building code upgrade is known as the Stretch Energy Code. The Energy and Sustainability Committee has recommended to the Board of Selectmen that the town make this upgrade. The Board of Selectmen agreed, and as a result, unanimously supported the article. The article and its benefits will provide, and the benefits it will provide to the town have been put before the Municipal Regulations Committee, and it received their recommendation as well. I'll briefly tell you why a yes vote makes sense for this article. Thank you. The town of Stoughton, as Noreen mentioned, is in the process of seeking designation as a green community. If you vote in favor of this article, the Energy and Sustainability Committee will be able to apply to the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources for Stoughton to become a green community. Upon becoming a green community, Stoughton will be given a grant of approximately $200,000. This money can be used for energy upgrade and conservation projects within the town. The grant money can be used for things like purchasing and installing high-efficiency heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment in town buildings, installing rooftop solar arrays on town buildings, purchasing of hybrid vehicles, or improving the efficiency of the town water and sewer pumping system. And in fact, if you remember back to Article 25, the Green Community Grant would have covered a large portion of that. That was the upgrades to the DPW pumping stations. Also, that was upgrades to the town hall, $250,000 cost to upgrade the HVA system. So this grant would have covered potentially all of that. Also, there was Article 27, which was LED streetlight bulb replacement, which was $100,000. This grant potentially would have covered a good portion of that as well. Currently, 138 municipalities in Massachusetts and over 50% of the population of the Commonwealth are covered currently by the Stretch Energy Code. And just wanted to show you in the next slides the progression of the towns that have joined on to become Stretch Code towns. So when the program started in 2009, well, the numbers are going pretty quickly, but you can see it's a growing program. We were up to 101 in 2011, beginning of last year, up to 131, and the last slide shows 134, which was toward the end of last year. And as I said at the beginning, that actually even after this slide was made by the Department of Energy Resources, another 4 towns have become Stretch Energy Code towns to bring it the total to 138. So it's a growing program. And as I said, even though it's 138 towns, it's over 50% of the population of the Commonwealth live in towns, in those 138 towns. So these towns are already gaining the benefits of the Green Community designation and have received the grants. Examples of Green Community grant amounts that just some of the nearby towns have received are Bridgewater received $201,000, Dedham received $180,000, Easton has received $418,000. They were able to go back for a second round. Hanover, $347,000. Kingston, $363,000. Lakeville, $158,000. Mashpee, $184,000. Milton, $157,000. Quincy, $370,000. Rockland, $185,000. And Westwood, $138,000. So a lot of money is being picked up by these towns. Again, that's just a few that are in this area here near Stoughton. By adopting the Stretch Energy Code, new buildings in Stoughton would be built to be more energy efficient. There is a small project cost to do this, but those costs are paid back in a matter of months by the financial savings that are realized by the building's reduced energy use. And those savings will last through every year of the life of the building. Energy costs are not likely to go down in the future, making this an all-around smart investment. Therefore, I ask you to join the Energy and Sustainability Committee, the Municipal Regulations Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the 138 other Massachusetts municipalities, and vote in support of this financial benefit to our town. Thank you.
Mr. Ventresco.
Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8. I'm not in favor of the stretch code because I'm not crazy about state or federal government tell me what to do when I build a home. That should be up to the individual. He should have his own choice if he wants to spend that money to put all that extra insulation, or he doesn't. Well, it sounds good, the state's going to give us a couple $100,000 to take care of municipal buildings, but it puts a bigger burden on the average homeowner. Now, I went to a seminar to upgrade my construction supervisor's license, and there's a HERS inspection that has to be done at these houses, and some of the builders and the realtors were saying some of the homes was up to $3,500 to have somebody come in and test your home. Now, that's another added cost above the green stretch code. Before we act on this, I would like to hear from Mr. McGrath, the building inspector, see what he thinks of this. Mr. McGrath?
Mr. McGrath?
To give you a little bit of a history about the stretch code beyond what Mr. Bello stated, the stretch code, the concept of the stretch code was created in July of 2009. And basically, it was an idea that the cities and towns would have a local option to adopt an energy conservation code that would be about 20% more stringent or more energy efficient than the base building code. And at the time, the BBRS drew up a very specific code. The concept was that as the building code, the base building code, which Stoughton and about half the towns in the Commonwealth are still operating under, as the base building code sort of ramped up and required more and more energy efficiency, the stretch code would stay 20% ahead. There was a lot of debate when it was first, when it came in 2009, and there was a lot of debate about just what the additional construction cost for a new constructed single-family home would be. And I think that there's probably still a whole lot of debate. I've heard people, responsible people, say that it's $2,000 or $3,000 on a base of $175,000, and I've heard people say that it's as much as $20,000 on a base of $175,000. And it kind of depends on sort of what you count. But the stretch energy code in its early days towns were slow to adopt it. It wasn't until the Green Communities Act came into play, and I think that was in 2011. And basically, the Green Communities Act said that if you adopted the stretch code and did other things like what Noreen was talking about earlier, that you'd be eligible for these grants. And at that time, lots of cities and towns started to adopt the stretch energy code. And Mr. Billow is right that I think it's now 138 of the cities and towns, and probably somewhere around 50 or 60% of the population has adopted the stretch code. What's different today is that on July 1st of this year, the base building code, which has been based on the IBC, the International Building Code, currently the Energy Conservation Code for the base building code is the International Energy Conservation Code of 2009. On July 1st, 2014, everybody in the state not under the stretch code has to adopt the IEC 2012 code. The IEC 2012 code is actually a little bit more restrictive and energy conserving than the base code. And implementing that code will be expensive for builders It'll be difficult for me. I think it's going to require a kind of re-education of the home, at least in the residential side of the home builders in town. The other difference between now and in 2011, when the cities and towns were adopting the stretch code, is that unlike in 2009, when the stretch code was a published document and we knew exactly what it said, the state hasn't published what the new stretch code is going to be. There's a whole lot of debate about, just like there was a whole lot of debate when the original stretch code came into effect, about building insulation and tightness and indoor air quality and whatnot. They haven't been able to agree on what that code will be. So my feeling about the stretch energy code is it seems to me a big stretch indeed to adopt a code that you don't know what it is. And I would suggest that I would be happy as the building inspector to see the town wait until they know what the stretch energy code is before they agree to adopt it. Thanks.
Mr. Moderator, if I could add a few words?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGrath. That was certainly educational. I appreciate that background. I just add that we do know what the energy code is now because it's in effect, and the stretch energy code does change approximately every 3 years, as does the base code. So you're going to be using the base code, which is going to change roughly every 3 years, or you can get a few years ahead and use the stretch code, which basically you're going to have to follow anyway once the base code is upgraded anyway. So, I mean, you can wait and do nothing and get no money, or you can be willing to take a little bit of a jump ahead and use the stretch code. And also, I would just add that of the 138 towns that have accepted the stretch code, there is also written into this that you can vote to rescind that at any time, town meeting can, and not one of the 138 towns have done that in the 3 to 4 years that it's been in effect. So of the 138, all 138 still have that. And the range of towns, I just was looking at that today. I looked at one, Row, Massachusetts, a population of 393. They have the stretch code. They were given a grant of about $140,000. So surprisingly, there's many towns with population in Massachusetts below 1,000, and they seem to be handling the stretch code, I think, pretty effectively, getting the benefit of it, being a little bit progressive. And you know, as the representative of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, we would certainly do whatever we can to support the Building Commission in getting education or training. And again, I think it's a great move for the town.
Ms. Bronston?
The International Code Council wrote the International Energy Conservation Code and the Stretch Energy Code. These building codes are part of the centralization of power taken from local and state authorities and given to a global system. On the United Nations website, it states that the International Code Council is working to fulfill the priorities of the United Nations. Therefore, the Stretch Energy Code must be put into the context of international events as it carries out the United Nations agenda.
Do not interrupt the speaker.
I don't think you people are ready for this, so never mind. No, you're not ready.
Mr. Morton?
John Morton, Precinct 3. I've been listening to the arguments, and I find the objection to adopting the stretch code that we don't know what it's going to be puzzling, because that comment came right after the comment that the base code is also being amended and it's going to be implemented, and we don't know what it is going to be either. The truth of the matter is, when you adopt something like a code, you don't know what it's going to be because it can be amended every 20 minutes, let's say more routinely, every 2 or 3 years. Of course, they're amending the stretch code. And of course, they're amending the base code. And of course, they will continue to amend the stretch code and the base code. If you look at our town budget, you have to look at it from the town point of view, not from the residential point of view. I'll go there in a minute. Energy costs is one of the highest items in our budget, and it grows every year. It's in the Department of Public Works, it's in the police department, it's in the fire department, it's in their buildings, it's in their vehicles, it's in their, in the places where the firemen sleep, it's everywhere. It's in our schools. Imagine what it costs to heat and air condition this building, and we're about to build a new one. The return on investment with respect to a stretch code is enormous. And the numbers show that if you require this kind of energy conservation, yes, the building costs go up slightly, but the fact is the operating costs go down significantly. And as the previous speaker stated, these reduced operating costs not only continue for the life of the building, and continue for the life of the town budget in the case of town buildings, but they escalate over time because the energy costs continue to go up. So I really urge that this is a new day for Stoughton. We're getting a new center. I truly believe that. We have adopted bylaws that show this town as a progressive town and a forward-looking town. This gives us an opportunity to say again, we are a new Stoughton, we are moving in the right direction, and we're going to do something. We're going to invest in ourselves. So I urge you to vote in favor of this article.
Mr. Elliott Hands.
Elliot Hanson, Precinct 1. I can understand why we want to conserve energy, rather than being beholden to the Middle East and some countries that consider us enemies, and would love dearly to put the screws to us. But I have some problems with this particular article here. Two of the major ones are right in the opening thing. It says amended Appendix 115.A.AA as it may be amended from time to time, and as the previous speaker had mentioned, that it will be amended time to time. Throw another choke factor in there. 1, 2, 3 paragraphs down there, 163.3 applicability. And it says, shall apply to new and commercial construction, that's not too bad, and to existing commercial and residential buildings. So that means when they change this up here, they're going to have to change existing buildings. And since we don't know, and the state doesn't know, and the good people up there in the State House that are coming up with this stretch energy code don't really know what they're coming up with just yet, it's starting to sound like, well, we got to pass this bill to find out what's in it. Which, you know, I'm all for giving the builders and everybody else the information they need and to make the buildings as efficient as possible, and that will reflect it, you know, the buyers that buy a building will know that it's efficient and built to the best existing knowledge that we have. That's fine. But to mandate it, and to mandate something that we don't even know what the heck it is, I have a real problem with that, and I can't see voting for this. It's taking the control, and as another speaker said, previous speaker said, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't see voting for this. Thank you.
Mr. Cole, Mr. Linehan.
John Linehan, Precinct 1. Real short, I apologize for not moving the question, but I think conceptually, no, we don't know what details are going to be buried within this, but I think conceptually we really need to do this. This is one of those issues, and I've been up here talking about it before, when we have to start thinking a little bit more long-term, as opposed to the end of our nose, our kids are going to be dependent upon this. And right now, we're melting the Antarctic, like it or not. And so I think we really need to do our part. If you look at the map up there, the politicians and their technological buddies are going to set this new code, but they cannot possibly screw the cities and towns that have already approved this. It is where the power centers lay in the town. So I say we get on board and become a leader as opposed to one of those that comes 10 years later as a follower and says, why didn't we do this sooner?
Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. The base code is changing, the stretch code is changing, but I believe that the base code is going to catch up to the stretch code. Well, the current stretch code, the base code will catch up to the current stretch code in about how many years? Any guesses on that? No, maybe I'm not asking the question right. If we go with the stretch code, I'm not sure I can even ask it right. Stretch code is ahead of the base code as far as requirements are concerned. But the base code is going to move up to where the current stretch code is. And it's going to take maybe a couple of years. This summer, so we're only talking a couple months ahead if we take this. Oh, I didn't understand that. All right. And the other thing I wanted to point out was they talk about $200,000 going to the town for energy-saving things. Now, that's not just $200,000 that we don't have to spend our own money on, but this is money that's going to be saving us money. So our electrical bills are going down, our fuel bills are going down. This is the town things, our cars, street lights. So we'll have savings beyond that. I don't know how much beyond would it be. Like in a year, if we have $200,000 of capital investment put in, what would our annual savings be? Any ideas?
Well, you're right that it would be $200,000. It does need to be for either alternative energy or energy conservation equipment. So the town will get the money, but then also the impact of the money will be to save more money. But the projects haven't been selected, and I don't have a number for you, but you're right. It's kind of a double win, because you get the money for something that you're probably going to do anyway, like, say, for instance, the town hall HVAC upgrades. But then those upgrades would be an ability to save even more money. So that's right.
Just as a guess, I'd think more than $50,000 a year, and that keeps building. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice.
We are the government, and we're here to help you. It seems that every one of these articles is being proposed because they're going to help us. There are 351 towns and communities, I believe, in the state of Massachusetts. So with my simple calculation, that means 213 have not adopted this yet, although 138 have. Excuse me. Right now, if you want to put solar on your home or on your roof, you virtually can get that for nothing. There are companies out there that are putting panels on roofs throughout the state, throughout the country, because they're able to convert the grants, state and federal grants, and that's how they're paid for. I was surprised about a year ago, I was at Home Depot, actually it was during the winter, looking for some salt to put on the walk, and there was a group of people there, and they were able to on their computer, were able to take my address and do a 360 of my house, showing the trees that are behind my house, which they said may have to be taken down to make this work. They were also able to show where the panels were going to go, if I went along with this, on my roof in my garage to make it happen. And the cost was $0. Not a bad deal. I ended up not doing it, but there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of that. So there's cost. You know, we always have that carrot out there from the government, you know, $200,000 going once, going twice. There's always the carrot. But as the building inspector mentioned, it's going to be more expensive for builders to build homes. You know what that means? It's going to cost you more to buy a house or to have it refurbished or upgraded. So I like to look at things, not just with the carrot that's being dangled out, but I want to know, and I think the building inspector alluded to it, that this is going to cost individuals. Now, the town might get some money to do something on a roof or whatever like that, but we as individuals are still going to be paying more, even if someone comes in to do a rehab for you. Now, I met, interestingly, a man today that's rehabbing a building here in here in Stoughton. He's moving his business from Waltham, which is great, bringing about 100 high-paying jobs to the town of Stoughton. It's a company that builds valves, and they're very unique. Now, in a situation like this, you're going to have, I'm not saying this applies to this individual business, but if we're going to be bringing businesses into town and make them spend more money to, say, do conversions or whatever, upgrades or whatever, it doesn't help. You know, it's the whole thing about being business friendly again. You can't keep making things expensive for businesses to come to your town. You just, because they're not going to come. These guys are leaving Waltham to come to Stoughton for that very reason. And it's great for us. I think it's fantastic that these guys decided to do this. Also, we heard some testimony from the building inspector, told you his opinion, and in my mind, the building inspector is our expert. Now, I'm not saying that these ideas aren't good ideas, but I'm going to go with our expert. I'm going to go with the building inspector. He told you that there's a lot out there. The actual cost of doing this to an individual is still debatable. He's told you it's going to be difficult for him, and he advised that we should wait on this until we know what's going on. So my vote is going to be in line with what the building inspector has told us. He's our expert. Thank you.
Mr. Van Tresco.
Mr. Moderator, if I could, just briefly.
Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Van Tresco spoke already once. There's people that haven't spoken yet, that have their hands up, that haven't spoken.
That is correct.
I just want to remind you about that.
I was just going to remind him about. Did you want to speak on something?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Without the seats, I can't have a handicap problem, okay? Put down. A hip problem.
Mr. Moderator, if I could, just in response to the previous speaker.
Mr. Billow.
A few people have mentioned that this code would make buildings more expensive, and I think we all know, and if we don't, if we thought about it, we'd realize that the cost of a building isn't the construction cost, it's the construction and operation. And construction is a one-time cost. It can be large, that's for sure, to build a house. But the operation costs go on for 20, 30, 40, anybody live in a 100-year-old house, I mean, it's a long time. So by saying it's going to cost more for homeowners, that's really an oversimplification and possibly not, basically not even true, because this is going to result in lower costs for homeowners.
Now, Mr. Ventresco, when he came initially, he asked someone to respond to something. He did not spend his full 10 minutes. I'm not going to give you another 10. You'll have about
Wait a minute, did
5.
he ask me to speak?
Left.
Didn't he just spread me to the mic?
Did you want to?
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. Didn't you tell me to come up here and speak? You asked me if I wanted to speak?
Yes, but, all right, you'll
Oh,
do
no,
that
let him-
now.
let
Are you ready?
Let him speak and I'll speak after him.
Okay. Mr. Ventresco, you only got 5. You already.
We got a little history from one of the members out here earlier, so I'm going to give you a little history where I think why we're here today, why our cost of energy is as high as it is, why we're into this green stretch code. All right, let's go back to the early 60s when President John Kennedy got elected president. He was going to harness the St. Johns River in Dickey, Lincoln, Maine, to put up a power plant to take care of New England for power. But the environmentalists put a stop to it. Also, he was talking about harnessing the Quoddy tides, which is a fast tide coming in and out, so he could get the tide in, tide out to generate electricity. New Brunswick, Canada is doing that right now today. They don't have a big power plant. They put these squirrel cages out into the water, and they generate electricity with these squirrel cages, the tide coming in, the tide going out. So it's cheap electricity, it's clean electricity. In the late 50s, Hydro-Quebec put up a monstrous dam to generate electricity that was going to take care of Quebec, and New England was supposed to be the biggest buyer of that electricity, cheap electricity. Okay, for years, the power lines are at our border, northern border, but they're not allowed to come in because the environmentalists won't let them put up towers. Now, that's cheap electricity. So if all this had played out the way it should have been, we wouldn't be here today with high cost electricity. In everything we do, we talk about solar panels, windmills. It's not the answer. It's not going to generate enough electricity. Now, Cape Winds, if it wasn't the state of Connecticut and Massachusetts forcing the big utility companies to sign on to buy 50% of that power, it never would get off the drawing board because it's too expensive, and they said it was too expensive, and it was going to drive the homeowners and anybody that uses electricity, their rates way up. So these little things that's bugging us here tonight, it all goes back to the green people 50 years ago driving our cost of power up. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Cohen.
What everyone forgets is, when they put up a building today, the building is put up efficiently anyway, and you pay for that. Your lighting fixtures, buildings that are going up now, they get $250,000 to $1 million reduction from the utility companies. Everyone forgot the utility companies. The Edison or the gas, they're all owned by the same people, but they're called rebates before these get off the ground. And this goes from the engineers to the people that put your lighting and your refrigerations in, and the first word out of their mouth is, how much are we getting back? And there's a formula for that. So before that building gets off the ground, some of those rebates are $1 million. It all depends how much the building. There's a percentage. If you have a house that's 100 years old and you're not going to do anything with it, you're going to freeze. There's nothing about it. I have a house that was built in 1970, I think, and I want to replace the windows. The savings was amazing. You put insulation up there. They gave you a rebate. They gave me a rebate on my windows. They gave me a rebate on my insulation. My insulation, I never realized how much could save when you have air conditioner heat. It was almost 0.25% of my energy dropped. And I did that by myself because I wanted to be warm. I'll be warm anyway, but why should I pay the extra? So I paid $700, and I saved myself over a year and a half, almost $1,000. Wow, that was a lot of money to save. The windows, when I put my windows in, I said, I have a lot of sun, can you tint so it doesn't take the furniture? Because my wife would have killed me if the furniture turned colors. There was something for that. I put it in. It was expensive. 2 years I got that money back, and I got a rebate. So no matter what everyone's telling you, and especially buildings now, you have people come in, the utilities will come in into your house and do everything for you, and it costs you nothing. Zero. Or if you need a little more, they charge you almost nothing to do it today because they want the energy so they can sell it to someone else. So as far as someone's talking about that, that's hogwash. This stuff here, you could redo your whole town. And there's 3 light fixtures in the center of this town. LEDs. There's 2 on Kotlik Street because I have them in front of my house. I was donated them by a company. And there's one in front of Mr. Batchelor's house, and I think you went down to see them. 25-watt LEDs takes the place of 50-watt high-pressure sodiums. And the light is as white as you could see, and it covers double the length it does with an LED. It would cost you nothing to reduce your lighting, and I don't know how much the lighting is in this town for the streets. It cost you a small fortune, and you could save almost half of that. To me, it's a no-brainer. I just don't understand. We're going. This is a progressive town. We pass liquor licenses. We pass this, theater, and we're fighting over pennies here. And believe me, the builders, when they go out to build houses, they go over to the best and they negotiate the best deals you can be. You bet your life on that. They get a different price than when we walk in and ask for pricing. So I don't feel one bit sorry for a builder. And the bottom line is this should be passed, and let's get on the progressive Stoughton instead of going backwards again. Thank you.
Mrs. Soveny.
Deborah Soveny, Precinct 4. I'm also a LEED accredited professional. That's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design National Green Standards. This is something that is not only good for homeowners, for builders, for the town of Stoughton, but also for the planet. And if you look at the map, it's not like we're right on the edge. 22 years ago, my husband and I built our houses, mostly sweat equity. And unlike all of our other neighbors on Palisades Circle, we took the little bit of money that we had and did a few really simple things. The walls in our house are made with 6-inch studs, not 4 inches. We used, we spent a little bit more for low-E windows, and did some other very simple things with regard to the construction. Now, the end result is that our both our air conditioning and heating bills are absolutely a fraction of our other neighbors. And what I couldn't understand at the time is that so many of these things to build a house that's a little bit more or a lot more energy efficient is relatively simple. But nobody was doing it. This is a good thing, and this is something that we should vote yes for. Thanks.
Mr. Rock.
Move the question.
Mr. Cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion to cut off debate carries. This is a general bylaw, only requires a majority vote. And I'll take a voice vote. If there's any questions, I'll have a standing count. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Ms. Doutlemine in the chair. All those in favor, please rise. Chairman, take a count. Precinct 1.
9.
Precinct 1 is 9. Precinct 2. 9. Precinct 2 is 9. Precinct 3. 14. Precinct 3 is 14. Precinct 4. 12. Precinct 4 is 12. Precinct 5. 13. Precinct 5 is 13. Precinct 6. 10. Precinct 6 is 10. Precinct 7. 14. Precinct 7 is 14. Precinct 8. 7. Precinct 8 is 7. All those opposed, please rise. Chairman, take count. Precinct 1.
2.
Precinct 1 is 2. Precinct 2. 8. Precinct 2 is 8. Precinct 3. 1. Precinct 3 is 1. Precinct 4. 2. Precinct 4 is 2. Precinct 5. 2. Precinct 5 is 2. Precinct 6. 1 and 1 abstention. 1 and 1. Precinct 7. 1. Precinct 7 is 1. Precinct 8. 3. Precinct 8 is 3. The motion carries. 88 yes, 20 no, 1 abstention. Article 59. The petitioner is present, and the town meeting member, Denise Bronston. They weren't, you can do that, yes. They weren't really tabled. It's just, you just want to act on, you want to act on them together? There's a different, I'm going to give you a different. I know you are, but they're two different subjects. Well, then we don't, unless they're related subjects, we don't combine it. Well, that she has to do separately. Yes. Now I'm going to make a statement at the beginning, so it might save you a little time. On Article 59, the original article called for eliminating or rescinding the schmood. I'm not going to keep repeating that. Altogether, this motion is calling for amending, which is a different process. It was not advertised as such, and the planning board voted not to recommend. Therefore, no report on a specific subject, and therefore a town meeting cannot take action on it. So the only motion we can accept in this situation is to dismiss. No, that's correct. And if you let me finish what I was saying, the only thing that she can do. I know the sound is terrible. So the motion is to dismiss. Yes. All those in favor of dismissing? Aye. Yeah, okay. All those opposed? Motion carries. I have to record that. Article 60, Ms. Bronston.
I make a motion to dismiss.
On the motion to dismiss.
60.
This is to dismiss. I can hear a lot of noise up there. I know, the sound in here is very, yes. Again, on the motion to dismiss.
60.
This is Article 60. You just got through you just asked 59, it was dismissed. On Article 60, Ms. Bronston, again, repeat.
I make a motion to dismiss.
On the motion to dismiss, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. Wow, we're moving along. This now, according to our agenda, we will begin where we left off on the budget. Now, oh yes, we will. There's a couple of things we've got to remind where we're at. Now, before we begin, I did have, before we start back into the budget, we, since we do not have account numbers, we're going by the page number and the subject on the page first. So, which we left off on page 33. You know, Mr. Gito, yes. I can't hear you. I have the same problem.
We have some other articles that were tabled. I think one on the armory and another. And there are several articles that we were putting off until the last day of town meeting.
Those are all accounted for.
I guess I understand that. And I'm wondering if we could deal with those and then deal with the budget, seeing we're going to have to come back anyway, and deal with that all in one night and be done with it. Because that way we can sort of clean up all the articles except for Article 2 and anything that's going to be heard, just any reconsiderations. Just trying to do something that's neat, okay?
So am I.
Okay.
So that's why I'm addressing this before we actually start making a motion on this. And the other issue is that Mrs. Camacho had approached me to make a motion on, to notify you that she is, or everybody else, that she is planning to make a motion to take a couple of portions of the budget out of order, and in order to do that, so that we're not really changing the money, it's just where we're putting the money, it is necessary to take the account that you're going to reduce and address it before you put the money someplace else. Now, in doing that, regardless of what the subjects are, once you have opened up and taken some money out of that account, that will not be allowed for reconsideration. You'll do it, and it's done once. You can't go back picking and picking against a budget item. So it's a one-shot deal when you do that. The second part to follow that would be the budget that you're putting the money into. Now, we've agreed to that system 20 years ago or better, so that's no change in our procedures. However, I will also advise you that under the decision of the town of Hanson in 1991, that I cannot mandate, or nobody else in this room can mandate, that you balance the budget. If you don't balance it, it's still up to the Board of Selectmen to either call for Prop 2.5 override or have another town meeting to make the correction so things do work. I tell you that now so that any other potential changes in the sequence when we do things and begin whenever on the budget, that will be the procedure as we've done in the past. We very seldom move a lot of money around, but that could change because it's a new format in the budget. So I will recognize Mrs. Camacho to explain what she was going to do. She came, Mrs. Camacho?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I know that we had talked, and I'm ready to follow your advice and ask for a suspension of the rules in order to discuss the school department budget and followed by discussing the finance committee budget.
And now is that now or when we really get into the budget? In other words, right now we have still
I would prefer to do it when we get into the budget, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, so it's to suspend the rules and take the school committee first?
Yeah, when we get into the budget, that is correct, sir.
And then the finance committee?
Yes, sir.
It's only on the procedure. Mr. Coleman, not the content.
Yes.
I'm going to address it there so that...
We received a multi-page form from the Finance Committee related to the school department budget. Do we want to look at that 32-hour rule and perhaps read this through before we consider the budget?
It's a very good idea. That's why we made that rule.
So then might we go on to some other articles aside from the budget now then?
Yeah, now that's what we're trying to decide.
Oh, okay.
Now, was Pat's right under my nose. That's why I can't see.
Just briefly, I just want to mention the packet that you were given that was just referred to. It's a little bit out of order. If you flip a few pages into it, you'll come to the page that says memo to the town meeting members. If you make that your first page, it'll be make a lot more sense. So it's about, how many pages in? It's like the 5th page in, it's memo to town meeting members. If you just flip it around so that's your first page when you go home to read it with your glass of warm milk at bedtime, it'll just make a lot more sense if you start with that section.
It'll be easier
Thank
for
you.
me to go to sleep. So it's a start. I'm writing start here on the page that says memo. On the motion, Mrs. Camacho that will suspend the rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. So
Thank you,
we'll take that up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Now, Mr. Gito addressed the question of whether we should continue to lay that on lay the budget on the table. At this point, all those in favor of continuing it on the table? That's just the budget, Article 11. We want to, and then we'll take some of this other stuff that might be done rapidly. That was, in other words, Mr. Gito, will you restate your motion, which is to, just so that instead of just doing it by discussion, we'll do it by formal motion.
I move that we keep Article 10, is that the budget motion? 11, excuse me, on the table until Wednesday, and take the other articles that there were some articles that were tabled. There were some articles that probably the town manager could bring up if there aren't going to be contracts settled between now and Wednesday, if he's listening to me. So that we can get all of those things out of the way and just talk about the budget and the articles that are going to be reconsidered on Wednesday night. This is just sort of housekeeping.
On the motion to continue on the table with the budget, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Pat?
I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse this further, but I'm getting myself a little confused. It's fine to go and read the Finance Committee packet before Wednesday night, but what we don't have before us, unless I'm missing something, is Dr. Camacho's motion on what she plans on doing with those budgets. So even if we read this tonight, if a motion is made on Wednesday night to change a budget, we won't have had that 30 hours in advance.
That's why we asked this. She has the privilege to do that during the process.
Okay, so we're putting the whole budget off till Wednesday, but then on Wednesday, people can make changes to the budgets as we go without those changes being given 30 hours in advance?
That's why you have a little time here for everybody to read it over. All right, she says all she...
But my document does not have cuts. That's what I'm saying. My document explains what we've done, but there's two separate issues here. To read that and understand, but when we get to Wednesday night, let's say someone decides to zero out the treasurer's budget. Will we have needed that motion 30 hours in advance?
I think it would behoove anybody else that is going to do something to make it known to the Finance Committee as a courtesy.
Okay, because that's all I'm saying. So Dr. Camacho, I understand what you're doing, but so if you give that tonight, then that will be 30 hours in advance of Wednesday. If not, then we have to decide about that rule. Thank
you. Mrs. Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have the copies of the motions. I have them in my pocketbook, and I will give them to the precinct chairs and put some up front here. I have copies for everyone. I came in late because I have to work until 8 o'clock on Monday nights. That's why I didn't interrupt the meeting and put things up here which people wouldn't take. So I have them. And if you permit me, Mr. Moderator, at what point in time would you like me to distribute them?
If you have them with you, fine, or...
All right, fine, thank you.
Give some to each precinct chairman, and we'll continue on where we, now that that's been done. Now, so we have a motion to leave it still on the table. Yes, we did. I did that at 10:49. If you're confused, oh my. That's yes. All right. I got an extra one. No.
It was a good idea.
Hold 1 second.
Where's the attendance go?
We would be looking at, yeah.
Okay, everybody, you should have the motion. Some of them are big, some of them are little. They're the same. She just cut them. So if you got a big one or a little one, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Remember.
Yeah.
It's flammable.
According to the blue sheet that you received in the mail and also distributed today, it says we would continue from Articles 13, 14, 15, 16. Do we have any motions on that? Mr. Hartman, as town manager, who has the right to speak on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and has the privilege of being a non-voting member of town meeting, what is your wish with Articles 13, 14, 15, and 16? This may be done as a unit, or may be...
We want 13 and 15 to remain on the table. Excuse me, 13 and 16, and we move to dismiss 14 and 15.
13 and...
We move to dismiss 14 and 15.
All right, so we keep
Correct.
13...
Police and fire.
Somehow, we already did 12. I just want to be sure that we're not... I do. We did do 12. Okay. So 13 and, so 4...
Mr. Moderator, number 12 was previously dismissed.
Okay. I just, because I not with dismissed on 5-7. Okay. And 16 is going to stay on the table. On the motion to dismiss Article 14, all those in favor? Aye. All right. All those opposed? I'll declare it a vote. This is at 9:58. Today is 6:16. On the motion to dismiss Article 15. You all right? All those in favor of taking it off the table first? All those opposed? The motion is carried, even if it... Now, on the motion to dismiss. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. It is 9:59. 6. Now, we got Article, let's see, I'm just making sure. Table No, I'm just making my notes on my pieces of paper here. Okay. Article 23.
Motion to take Article 23 off the table.
Even though we've gone over a checklist of these, it's nothing. Always be sure. I have a feeling something's going to be left out. All right. Article 23.
That the town vote to appropriate $60,000 to pay for a feasibility study and schematic plans to reuse the Armory for municipal office space or departmental space, and that to meet this appropriation, $60,000 be transferred from free cash. Yes.
Yeah. Take off the table. All those in favor of taking Article 23 off the table? Aye. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It's 10 o'clock. Now.
Point of information, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Crimmins.
Thank you. Barry Crimmins, Precinct 4. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll confess, I'm a little bit confused about what we're doing.
So am I.
Well, the people are laughing, I think, are the ones that know me. Well, I guess I've never heard this motion before. We moved not to take something off the table. I never knew we had to do that before. But on Article 11, we moved not to take a tabled item off the table, which is the budget. But now I see half a dozen or so articles not knowing what the moderator plans to do, but they're the money articles, including Article 23 that is presently before us. And I'm just not sure, Mr. Moderator, in light of the current status of the town's budget this year, how we are to reasonably and prudently act on any other money articles until such time as we have adopted a budget. So I'm looking for some guidance from you, Mr. Moderator, as to an appropriate means to proceed and whether or not it would in fact be prudent to act on these other money-related articles until such time as we have voted on our budget. And so through you, to you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to see, and I'm getting some distraction by right ear, Mr. Moderator, but I'd like to hear from you what you would propose if it's appropriate for you to make a proposal.
Well, a couple of issues here. Normally, if we had just done this stuff, sometimes we do some money things before the budget. Usually we've done them after, which is your point. Now, even if usually there are things that are in the budget that are sometimes related to budget articles. Procurement of things, operating expenses, such. Now, and if we had been moving right along, we would have addressed them no matter which way we're doing. You just sort of shuffled the deck here and probably flipped a few cards under the table. So these are the few things that we have left here. Will still are dependent on the budget. And definitely those issues dealing with the stabilization fund.
Mhm.
Those things can't be done, and
I'm sorry, did you say can or can't?
well, we have traditionally come up with the real numbers for any deposits or withdrawal to the stabilization fund. So therefore, that's why they were put in this particular order, with the presumption that we would eventually get the budget done. In any other unpaid bills, there is a question of unpaid bills. So if it's in your wisdom that we not continue and just pick up where we left off, I'll leave that up to the rest of the body. I'm not.
I guess part of my, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I guess through you, part of my confusion is, since we were last here two weeks ago, we've heard a lot of different things about the budget, the school committee budget, the town budget. I see Dr. Camacho's proposed motion that talks about addressing an $863,000 item dealing with the school department budget and the finance committee reserve. And I find the process that we've been going through this past year extremely frustrating, extremely difficult to follow when we don't seem to have any degree of uniformity or consistency in terms of what we as town meeting members are being asked to vote on. We talk about this 30-hour rule. We have another policy that says that the town meeting members are supposed to get the warrants 2 weeks prior to the start of town meeting. And here we are on Monday, June 16th, 14 days before the end of the fiscal year, and we are still kicking around numbers that, I don't know where some of these numbers have come from. I have a great deal of respect for my colleague from Precinct 4 who has presented tonight a motion that she wants us to take up on Wednesday night. But, I'm not sure where this comes from. I see a lengthy memo from a member of the Finance Committee that addresses various things that now we're told, go home and read it tonight and come back on Wednesday and be prepared to discuss it. And maybe it's me. Maybe I just don't get it. And this would not be the first, excuse me, the first time that is true. But I guess I'm looking for a little more leadership from my colleagues down front as to where we are going this year with this budget 14 days out from the end of the fiscal year. And I've yet to hear that. And maybe I missed it. Maybe it's been said. If I missed it, I apologize. And I will go along with what my colleagues want to do. But I still feel that we are missing, and maybe it's going to be forthcoming come Wednesday night, the type of information that we need to vote intelligently on the budget specifically, as well as on these other money articles. I have the utmost confidence in my fellow town meeting members that we will do the right thing. I am extremely frustrated that the information that in the past has been provided to us, and 2 weeks out from the end of the fiscal year, and we are still being given information piecemeal, being given information without much backup. And I, for one, Mr. Moderator, and I'll sit down, but I have just found this entire process frustrating, demeaning to us as town meeting members, and just not in the best interests of the town. Thank you.
So the question is, where do we go from here? Article 23 was mentioned, and 21, I understand. Article 21 was taken. Yes, that was voted. I don't have. Didn't have 5. Thank you. The motion to, on the motion to take, we've already done that. It is now Mr. Crimmins, now Mr. Fitzgerald.
Mr. Moderator, we are on Article 23, right? Okay. Thank you. Dick Fitzgerald, Precinct 3. I stood up when this article came up first and then was tabled. The facilities master plan that was originally performed, this would be the 5th year, and that shows that this building would need $1,474,000 of repairs. That's what we spent to have somebody tell us what needs to be done to that building. This is the 5th year, that's the year it would be needed, $1,474,000. So we know what it will cost to repair it, and that was 4 years ago. So you can add some money to that. That's what it'll take to repair it. I commend the town manager and the Board of Selectmen for saying we need space, we need office facilities, we need to move people to different places, or town hall is getting a little too crowded. So I understand that. My concern is that we spent $60,000 for a feasibility study for a public safety building, but this here is asking for $60,000 to pay for a feasibility study and schematic plans to reuse the armory. Well, they're going to come in and they're going to use the same consultants' work up. That's what it's going to cost to repair it. And I think we can get a pretty good feel and a pretty good job done for less than $60,000. My concern is that this comes from free cash. I don't know what, I'll bring that to the chairman of the Finance Committee. If we were to change that number, obviously if, whatever it is, it's coming out of free cash, we could be using that money someplace else, no? Yes, maybe?
Well, we
Seeing
did-
how we seem to be getting into a pretty good budget discussion?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Speaker. We did submit a balanced budget.
Good.
There is an allocation of free cash that's still available. This number was actually considered into that number. At the end of the meeting, we will vote to put an amount of money into the building stabilization account. So
Yeah.
the money's available,
Okay.
and the budget is balanced.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, through you to the town manager, is $60,000, I know it said on the page 84, it's an estimated cost. The recommendation was read in for the record by the chairman of the Finance Committee for $60,000. Is there any flexibility to that? Can it come down? Could $15,000 get us a good feasibility study?
I doubt 15,000 would do it. It may be less than 60,000, but
Somewhere between.
we have budgeted 60,000 because we don't want to have to come back to a subsequent town meeting.
Well, I disagree with it. 60,000 is kind of heavy, but I won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Mr. DeFelice.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I did speak as Mr. Fitzgerald did when this first came up, and I just want to remind everybody that whatever the town feels appropriate for the use of that building, it's probably the sturdiest building in the town of Stoughton. was built in the 60s and has withstood every storm, including the blizzard of '78, and it's still standing. There are obviously, because of some disrepair on the outer buildings, which can either be fixed, repaired, or the outer buildings could also be eliminated. But the building was built as a National Guard armory. The floors are in excess of 2 feet of concrete. They used to bring in Army vehicles, including tanks, into that building. So it was built to Army specs. So you know that building has a lot of wear yet to see. So again, I think I think the town manager said if he doesn't spend the 60 grand, obviously it comes back in. But we should be using it for something. You know, one time I was a proponent of saying it should be a public safety building. Maybe it still could be that. We're looking to do a fire police station. But if not, certainly the town should make use of it. It sits on over 3 acres of land. There's a lot of things you could do there. Yes, it has to be brought up to standards, but so wouldn't any other building that you would repair. Thank you.
Mr. Hill.
I just want to refresh everybody about why this got tabled. And Mr. Fitzgerald had made an observation which made a lot of sense at the time, to not take this free cash, but use an unspent article. And that was Article 36 at the annual town meeting from May 9th. It's actually on page 14 in your book. So it says A36 ATM. And there was $61,500 left, so it was great thinking. But I think that logistically there's a problem with that from...
Bond counsel has determined that is not possible.
So I'd have been all in favor for that, but... Go ahead.
Mr. Come to the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I was told something different. I was told that if we go back to the page that I looked at, I think it was on page 14, there were funds that were left over from that particular article. But in discussion, those monies were closed out. So the balance that was available for that was not 61, but somewhere in the vicinity of about 6. That went back to the original makers of the article, and then the balance was just taken out. And that's what I was told, so that's why we cannot use that. I understand that. So, good thought, just can't be used, unfortunately. But again, I'll go, while I still have the opportunity, I'll make my point. $60,000 is an awful lot of money to tie up.
Mr. O'Regan. You see me? Yeah. He actually asked to speak before you came down. Mr. O'Regan.
Out of respect for the other speaker, can I step back and let the other speaker go first?
No, I recognize you. Now, let's
Thank
not
you.
waste.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bob O'Regan, Precinct 1, Board of Selectmen. I would like to offer reasons why I'm in favor of this article, and first and foremost, I'm pretty cheap, and I'm not going to be spending $60,000 or voting to authorize $60,000 if we can do the work we need to do for 35 or 40 or 42. And I have the utmost respect for the previous speaker talking about the work that's been done on this project and the $1.4 million estimate 5 years ago to bring this site up to design, I think it's design standard or current standard, building code standard. We're informed at this point that many of the outbuildings at the Armory site are now gone. That is, they can't be brought back. So if they're standing, the building inspector suggests that they should be raised. we're talking about the main building here. Several years ago, Stoughton Media Access considered putting the television studio into that building. Has a lot of the features that they would need for a facility. And when they went in there, they found that the conditions of the building were deplorable. It hadn't been maintained. It was decaying. It is decaying now. So this article is intended to have us, there's a theme here. Let us stop the decay. Let us understand what it's really going to cost us to figure out how to do it the right way the first time. And in this instance, this is a feasibility study not only to deal with the physical plant properties, that is, what do we need to fix to bring it up, but what do we put there? What do we do? And then how do we design it so that we can come back to town meeting and give town meeting an actual proposal on what actually to do with that building that has been doing nothing but decay ever since the National Guard left it. Although we talk about opportunities, we've never actually said as a town meeting body, we're going to figure out our options, come up with our best options, decide what to do, and do it. So, this request for funding is to allow us to do those things. If there's any recurring theme from this year's town meeting and last year's town meeting, it is, I think collectively, we've decided that's the direction we want the town to go in. Don't take half a step so that you can take a half a step backwards next year because you haven't thunk it out. Think it out, get it done, come up with real numbers, and we'll deal with it. That's what we're asking you to allow us to do with this article. I have every expectation that if this work can be done for $40,000 or $42,000 or $43,000, that's what you will see spent. We've done many things on the cheap, shaved a few bucks, you know it better than I do, and we wind up paying on the other end. So if we can get qualified folks to give us real good analysis and real good concepts for this building, we're better off. And it is, frankly, short dough now as against big money later, and finally stopping the decay. Every year, every day we don't do anything on that building, we are deciding to keep letting it rot. Every day that happens, it costs us more to bring it back, whatever we do. So if you think waiting another year will cost us less than $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000, I beg to differ. So it's a question of where do we take it. This gives us the opportunity. It lets us come back to you to say, here's a definitive plan for moving forward with that site that we can be proud of. So I hope you approve this article. Thank you.
Mr. Gito.
I want to thank the previous speaker for telling you how deplorable much of this building is. It's got mold. The ceilings are leaking. All of the tiles in the top on the ceilings are falling down in many sections. This building, I think we need to do what this article is asking to be done. But I think a further question is not what can the building be used for, but should the building be used by the town? I think that should be part of the question that's asked. You know, sometimes you can get a gift that really isn't worth having, and maybe this is one of them. So I would vote the money, but I would expand the scope of the question. Thank you.
Mr. Cohn.
I remember when the tanks, the trucks, and everything were out there, and a lot of us remember. And it took us a lot of time and our reps to get this building. And the day we took over this building, we should have put it in front of it, junk shop, because that's what it turned out to be from day one. The equipment, the back looked like a parking lot for everything that we don't need goes into that building. In that building, it's a junk shop. Always has been a junk shop. It's time to clean the place up, find out what we're going to do with it. There was talk about a youth center there, a police station, a fire substation in North Stoughton. I've heard how many hundreds of times we were going to do something with this. But you know what we did with it? Nothing. Again. Now the place, we don't even know if the place is even worth the fix. But we should find out before we really have a problem there, or God forbid someone gets into that building and gets hurt. We'll find out how much it's going to cost us, a lot. So let's do this, and let's stop fooling around, and let's get it done. Thank you.
Ms. Walsh.
Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. I move the question.
That's to cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. On the motion, and I'm going to rely on people keeping numbers. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. There's doubt in the mind of the chair. Will you give me 1 second? All those in favor, please rise and the chairman take account. Precinct 1.
A lucky 7.
Precinct 1 is 7. Precinct 2. Precinct, how many? 15. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 7. Precinct 4. 4 is 11. Precinct 5.
13.
5 is 13. 6. 9. Precinct 6 is 9. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 8. Precinct 1, all those opposed, please rise and the chairman take account.
Add 1, 2 in favor and 0 opposed.
Wait a minute. All I wanted was no. Don't give me anything else. 0.
0 for no.
Precinct 2.
0.
Precinct 2 is 0. Precinct 3. 7. Precinct 3 is 7. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 4. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 1. Precinct 6. 2. Precinct 6 is 2. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 3. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 0. What kind of numbers have you got here? The motion carries, 75 yes, 17 no. What's the information? It's not on the article.
And just real quick, I was inspired by the gentleman from Precinct 4 who was confused about what we were going to be voting on Wednesday, and I have to admit I am as well. What exactly is the budget that we're going to be voting on? We had handouts in subsequent meetings to the first night, and the latest one I thought I was going to go home and read, and it would have something on the budget, but it's purely about the school's budget. So we got handouts that show the general government salaries. I had another handout with comparison of salaries. I don't know what we're voting on Wednesday. I just need clarification as to what we're voting on.
Well, since all of that stuff never came to the moderator directly for the purposes, what is in the Finance Committee report is what is going to be voted on.
From the book, the original.
The original book, as far as I'm concerned. On the motion to adjourn to Wednesday, and is now, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye.